Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Zoning Overlay Public Hearing. My name is Jaiza Page, and I am Chair of the Zoning Committee. The purpose of the public hearing today is to review the University District Zoning Overlay Plan. This proposal is based on recommendations of the University District Plan adopted by Council, feedback received from the community, analysis from city staff, and input from the University Area Commission and University Area Review. We have a few individuals here from the Department of Development who will be joining us and presenting this afternoon. I would like to acknowledge the Director of the Department, Director Steve Shoney. And our two speakers are Mr. Kevin Wheeler, Planning Administrator, and Christopher Lohr, Senior Planner. So I will now give the floor to Kevin. Thank you so much for coming this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Page. I appreciate you hosting this hearing and giving us a chance to explain the work that we've been doing. I want to introduce the team from the Planning Division that's worked on this. Christopher Lohr on my right, Dan Fertelman. Dan staffs the University Area Review Board, so he's in the university area a lot. And then Mark Dravilis. Mark is the Assistant Planning Administrator and also oversees the Neighborhood Planning section. And all four of us, as well as others, have been involved in this work. As you indicated in your introduction, we have worked for quite a while now on this project and worked with stakeholders, mailings to property owners, community leadership, some of whom are here today. And we're really appreciative of that input. It's one of the things about the University District you can count on is lots of engagement. The plan that this is sort of paved the way for this initiative was adopted in early 2015. And among the principal objectives of that plan was to focus growth in the University District around the university itself. And since that time, we've had about 10 projects, fairly significant projects, happening along High Street and Lane Avenue that really reflected the plan's objective of doing just that, focusing the growth. And one of the things that this overlay does is to reinforce the principles of the plan, including where development would take place and the form it takes place. And we've also benefited from time and experience in seeing development take place since the plan was adopted. So we've had the ability to test the plan, make adjustments where we needed to, and we think that the overlay reflects that, as you'll learn more. And it also takes care of some fairly boring but important administrative things, the kinds of things that matter in code when it comes to board reviews and how we conduct our work. So I won't say any more. I'll just stop at this point. Christopher will walk us through a PowerPoint, and then the four of us will be available for any questions that you or other folks may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. So as he mentioned, the University District Plan was adopted in 2015, involved extensive public involvement, and since that time has been the single source for land use guidance used by planning staff. It included commercial and residential design guidelines, and it set the stage for the code updates we are discussing today. The University District Plan drew on decades of planning recommendations, calling for the highest intensities of development to be focused near the university. The plan, though, is policy. It's not code. We've used it throughout the last 2 years as applied during review of all zonings and variances. It's also facilitated the development that has occurred closer to the university, including a number of larger projects that you can see if you go down High Street today. Lessons learned since that time are being incorporated into the University District zoning overlay. Throughout this process in the last year, we've went through significant stakeholder engagement. We had a community open house in the summer in July with over 80 attendees, and that included a notice sent to 1,200 plus impacted and adjacent property owners. We had a 1-month comment period after that point where we took online survey and phone and email comments. After that, we worked with the University Area Commission and their planning committee through multiple meetings and received their recommendation in December of 2016. Following that, we received the recommendation from the University Area Review Board. In February, we sent out another 1,200 letters in advance of the Development Commission meeting, where We received unanimous commission support. And now, again, council sent out 1,200 letters in advance of this hearing today. Throughout that time, we've had a website presence and fielded telephone inquiries and email inquiries from property owners and concerned citizens. So relating specifically for the overlays and review board, the changes that are occurring, the university area planning overlay currently exists. It will become the university district zoning overlay as proposed. So the current UAPO was adopted in 1992 to address development issues unique to the university area. It's found in Chapter 3372 of the Columbus City Code. The name of the overlay, however, may cause confusion. So in order to fix that, we've changed it to the University District Zoning Overlay, which clearly states its purpose and where it applies. It also will be taken out of Chapter 3372 and will be found in a new Chapter 3325, and the existing UAPO would be repealed. The University Area Review Board will become the University Impact District Review Board. Again, that name change applies, in essence, to clarify where the board has purview. That is the University Impact District. There's no change as far as the function of the body. It will remain an architectural review body that considers and approves plans within a portion of the university district that is called the Impact District. One change that will be placed into the UDZO is that all appeals from the University Impact District Review Board will now go to the Board of Commission Appeals, and this is to bring it in line with other boards and commissions that we have at the city. And the existing university urban commercial overlay will be repealed. The design standards found in the urban commercial overlay with slight modification will be included in the UDZO text. The slight modification allows for front setbacks to exceed the currently allowed maximum, which would allow for flexibility to include things like plazas, patios, landscaping, et cetera, but will continue to disallow parking, stacking of vehicles, and circulation of vehicles. And the reason for this is currently in the university district, we have multiple overlays, zoning overlays. So this is really a cleanup task that allows us to bring together the standards into one zoning overlay rather than causing confusion. As far as the residential and commercial standards, currently there are residential sections within the university area planning overlay. Our proposal is that those sections would be brought into the university district zoning overlay without any changes. And that's because this is phase one. We're working on commercial areas of the university district. So we didn't want to really work on anything in the residential section at this point. As far as the commercial standards, there's no existing standards in the zoning code for the commercial areas of the university area planning overlay. The university district zoning overlay would include neighborhood commercial and regional commercial standards. So the two new sub-areas, regional and neighborhood commercial, are brought forward from the university district plan's recommendations. The guidelines found in that plan would apply. The modified urban commercial overlays I mentioned would apply, and then new standards that are addressing building height, density as measured by floor area ratio, or AKA FAR, as well as parking requirements would be applied. So this is a map of the university district zoning overlay in the north section of the university district. So the red and the orange are the regional commercial and neighborhood commercial, respectively. The blue line denotes the impact district boundary as it currently stands, which will remain unchanged. This is the south section of the University District, and these maps are available on our website. In the neighborhood commercial sub-area, the University District Plan recommends that these areas include a mix of land uses, including retail, office, multifamily residential, and institutional. The University District zoning overlay standards would allow for new development that is generally consistent with the intensity and scale of the existing structures. In the regional commercial area, the University District Plan recommends that the most intense development in the university area be focused on High Street from Fifth Avenue to Norwich and Lane Avenue to the west of High Street. The UDZO standards would allow for new development that is generally consistent with the recommendations of the plan. Focusing density in these areas reduces development pressure on the neighborhoods around High Street, and supports retail, transit usage, and walkability close to Ohio State and the area's main streets. The design guidelines, as found in the University District Plan, would apply to both the neighborhood commercial and regional commercial subareas. The section shown on the slide references the urban design section of the University District Plan as adopted by City Council in 2015, and any subsequent revisions or amendments that may come to be. It is used by staff and the review board in reviewing applications for certificate of approval, and has been used since 2015's adoption of the UDP for cases involving rezoning and variance. For building height, this is a new standard. So the typical height district throughout the university area is 35 feet with some exceptions. The existing code allows for a step back, step up that allows buildings to exceed the height district as the building steps back into its parcel. Within the University District zoning overlay, this step back, step up provision would not apply. In the neighborhood commercial area, there will be a 45-foot maximum. That is a change from the plan that we recognize as being appropriate and consistent with the existing character of the neighborhood. The neighborhood commercial subareas that are not located on Fifth Avenue or High Street, which represent really the nodes that are further back into the neighborhood, would include a rear setback of 20 feet for any portion of a structure that exceeded 35 feet. Within the regional commercial subarea, which is the more intense, there would be a 72-foot maximum, and that includes a change from the plan for one area, which is West Lane Avenue. For floor area ratio, there would be a new standard. The neighborhood commercial subarea would have a base FAR of 0.8 with a 1.4 FAR allowed for the rehabilitation or expansion of contributing buildings or for the replacement of a non-contributing building. Within the regional commercial subarea, a 1.0 FAR minimum would exist, but no maximum.
Chris, I'm sorry. Could you briefly just talk about the difference between neighborhood commercial and regional commercialization?
Sure. So the neighborhood commercial areas are the less intense areas. They were orange on the map. They will have, are you referring specifically to the FAR section or just generally? Okay. So the regional commercial area is the more intense area that the plan recommends development be located on High Street and West Lane Avenue near the university. The other areas of the university area that are commercial would be designated neighborhood commercial. And so they have a lower height limit, lower FAR, or they have FAR standards, whereas the regional commercial subarea does not have an FAR max. And then they have the same parking standards, which I'll get to in a few minutes here. So to explain FAR, this is a graphic that shows how FAR is calculated. You can think of it as the ratio of the building's square footage to the lot's square footage. So a building that covers the entire lot at 1 story is a floor area ratio of 1. It could also, at a FAR of 1, be 2 stories covering half the lot, or 4 stories covering 25% of the lot. This is an example of a design that Dan Fertelman, next to me, created for the neighborhood commercial area that would represent sort of the maximum build-out that would still be able to be parked to the proposed code on a high street, North High Street in the Old North, for example. So this is a 4-story building, 45 feet, which is the height limit. It's mixed use, so residential above retail, and then parking to the rear. So for parking, there will be a new standard that applies to both the neighborhood commercial and regional commercial subareas. That standard is 50% reduction for non-residential uses from the existing code, and then a standard of 0.5 spaces per bedroom for residential uses. Again, this only applies in the neighborhood commercial and regional commercial subareas. The standards that currently exist for residential, purely residential areas elsewhere in the University District would continue to apply. And this 50% reduction for non-residential represents recognizing that there is transit, walkability, and bikeability in the area. And then the 0.5 spaces per bedroom really recognizes that the unique situation of the housing types in along these commercial corridors, in which the spaces per unit model sort of falls apart. So 0.5 spaces per bedroom better reflects the uses and the tenancy styles that we see in the University District.
If I may interject very quickly, and Kevin, this may be a question for you. Can you talk briefly about how this kind of aligns with the Short North parking study that has been currently undergoing?
Certainly, Councilmember Page. The non-residential number is the same. So in the urban commercial overlays citywide, we have reduced parking by up to 50% of the citywide number. And just as a point of clarification, when we look at parking demand in the city and the regulations, the citywide requirement is the same requirement that applies to Sawmill Road or Hamilton Road. So in urban settings like the Short North or the University District that have such strong transit capacity and walkability, those numbers really don't make sense. So we have found that a 50% reduction for non-residential uses is an appropriate number. So in this case, this proposal matches the Short North special parking area that we prepared and that you recently adopted. In the case of residential parking demand, we've taken a different approach here because, as Christopher said, housing scenarios in the University District are different. The current code requirement is 1.5 spaces per multifamily unit. That could be an efficiency that's very, very small. It could be a 5-bedroom apartment, such as not uncommon in the University District, or 6 bedrooms. Same parking requirement, 1.5 spaces. So what we tried to do was both recognize the efficiencies and benefits of living on a transit-supported corridor within walking distance of the school, but also do a better job of reflecting demand placed by the larger units, the ones that have 5 and 6 bedrooms. So right now, if you have an efficiency or a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom, you'd be benefiting from our new standard. But if you have 3 or 4 or 5 bedrooms, you'd actually have to provide more. So that's different than the Short North special parking area, where we don't have the same pressure from the type of student and residential mix. In those instances, we've just got a straight 1 space per unit requirement.
So this slide actually goes into that a little bit more with a table that, again, shows how 3 bedrooms, a 3-bedroom unit would basically be current code. So 0.5 spaces per bedroom, 3 bedrooms, that would be 1.5 spaces. Same as current code. If you have a 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, or studio, you'd receive a discount. 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom, and so on would require more parking. And that, that represents the idea that a 6-bedroom unit in the university district is very different from a 6-bedroom unit elsewhere, where 6-bedroom unit in the university area is probably 6 students, each maybe unrelated, that might each have their own cars. So what is not changing as a result of this Phase 1 University District zoning overlay? The base zoning and associated permitted uses are not changing. The standards for the residential areas outside of the designated neighborhood commercial and regional commercial subareas are not changing. The University Impact District boundary, where the University Area Review Board to become the University Impact District Review Board has purview, will not change, as well as the composition of the University Area Review Board as far as its membership will not change. So next steps, City Council consideration, and then changes would become effective after Council approval. But we'd be willing to take any questions from the audience.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I would like to welcome my colleague, Councilmember Michael Cinziano, to this hearing. I know that he has been very active in the university and Short North areas, and we thank you for your passion for those 2 neighborhoods and for coming today. I do have a couple of questions. Could any of you speak briefly on any engagement with Ohio State University?
So I'm going to probably ask one of these folks to help me out on this. We have met with and kept in contact with OSU through their campus partners role throughout the process, and they're on our email distribution list, and we've had meetings in our office and so on to sort of sit down and talk through the proposal. And obviously they have some interest in some of the work that they're doing and how would this overlay impact those projects and the zonings that they established. And I think we feel like we've communicated pretty consistently and well with them, and they are, I think, pretty supportive of what we're doing.
Thank you. And again, could you just briefly talk about the engagement with the community, the civic associations, area commissions?
Certainly. So the slide that Christopher went through earlier showed the series of public meetings, meetings before the University Area Commission, their planning committee, et cetera, as well as the 3 rounds of mailings. And each of those mailings involved 1,200 property owners and adjacent, both affected and adjacent. I think just as importantly, at each point, we continued to share. Christopher was the person who got all the calls and emails. We continued to share contact information so that people could call at any point, even though there was an official 1-month comment period after the public open house. We took comments throughout the process. So we did everything we could. I think, as I said earlier, one of the gratifying things about working in a neighborhood like the University District is that you're going to get input. So the process tried to accommodate that as much as possible.
Thank you so much. I do not believe that we have any further questions. We do have one speaker who is with us this afternoon, and I would like to ask Ms. Cheryl Schneider to come up to the podium. She is present. If you could let us know any organizations that you are representing, and you have 3 minutes. And thank you so much for coming to the hearing this afternoon.
Cheryl Schneider of Wright Legacy Rentals. I own 2 properties.
Ms. Schneider, I'm sorry, if you can come to the microphone.
I own 2 properties in this area, okay? So I wonder more questions than they are like a speech. First of all, every time I've ever had to get any improvement on my buildings, I've had to go through the Historic Commission, okay? Is any of that being taken into consideration with all of this? Because I have had to work very hard to make sure my buildings met all their requirements prior to then getting approval from the City of Columbus.
And if you have additional questions, maybe take notes and then address them after your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's just a speech, not, I can't ask questions as part of this?
Yes, you can ask questions, and then after your 3 minutes is up, then they will address them.
Okay. And then secondly, what about those of us that are right in that red area that we don't want to sell our buildings or, you know, tear them down? One of my buildings is right at 14th and Pearl. You've torn down buildings right in front of me, and you've stopped right there. I'm concerned about the traffic going through. Has there been a traffic flow of that where you actually stop? And, you know, what considerations being taken for those of us that are trying to keep our properties up, do a good job, take care of our tenants, but yet all this construction and all this is obviously imminent. And are you preserving the buildings that want to stay? That kind of thing. And that's it.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Snyder, and I believe Kevin may have a few answers for you.
Sure. First of all, the historic neighborhoods, the districts, there are 4 historic districts in the university area and then certain individually listed properties. This proposal would not change that. So any properties that are within historic districts today would continue to be within historic districts, and changes to the exterior of those properties would require Historic Resource Commission review and approval as they do today. So that does not change. With respect to traffic implications, I think one of the things that is important to recognize is that what has been going on really for development for the most part thus far has required a series of variances, has required traffic studies. The requirement for traffic studies will remain the same. Some projects will trigger them and some will not, but we have a public service department that always looks at that as a function of development proposals. And this overlay, I think, will, if anything, sort of clarify expectations with respect to parking and height and intensity of development. It will not, it does not expressly consider traffic, but it will work in conjunction with the other city regulatory frameworks that are in place to consider that. I don't know if...
Maybe I can add about the 14th and Pearl property. That was part, that's probably more in the purview of what happened with the Campus Partners rezoning of 15th and High. They will be making significant modifications to Pearl Street, as well as all the infrastructure for all their properties as part of that zoning. So in turn, there will be improvements to Pearl Street.
Thank you. Councilmember Cinziano.
Thank you, Chair Page. One thing that came up when we were asking about historic designation, I know there are certain neighborhoods that fall within the university area boundary that are looking for that historic designation. Would this overlay impact their process?
No, it would not. And I think earlier Christopher mentioned that this was the first phase of an overall update to the university zoning overlay. So we do anticipate coming back, working with the community on the residential portion. But this overlay, I think, as it, well, I know as it's proposed, and I think even as it would move into the residential areas, would be neutral on the question of historic designation. And I'm reminded that the previous speaker, if I could, Councilmember Stenziano, had asked about what if you want to keep your building. Nothing that we're doing is intended to force anyone to eliminate a building, demolish a building. In fact, in the neighborhood commercial areas, and you had asked Councilmember Page, what is the difference? I think the best way of thinking about it is the neighborhood commercial areas are you know, less intense. And in those areas, our floor area ratio model is intended to provide an incentive to keep older buildings. If you keep an older building, a contributing building, and those are typically built prior to 1950 or more specifically World War II, then you get a bonus in terms of what you can do in the way of an addition, et cetera. And that's designed specifically to find a way to encourage people to preserve older buildings. So if you tear down a contributing building, you don't get to build as big of a building as you do if you just add to one. It's not perfect, but it's one way that we can try to find to incentivize preservation.
Thank you so much. And that was our only speaker slip. Councilmember Cinziano, any additional comments? Well, thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for attending this afternoon. I'd like to thank all of our presenters and speakers and the Department of Development for your hard work on this. And also to thank the University Area Commission and University Review Board for engaging with the Department of Development and working through this and being engaged. We truly appreciate when citizens want to see improvements in their neighborhood and they're engaging with us and giving their comments. And I appreciate you all for coming this afternoon as well. With that, I will conclude this hearing, and we look forward to bringing this before the full body of council. Thank you.